Good to go.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the koha-US Education Committee. We've been working on this panel discussion over the last couple of months, and we're very glad to have you here, but we're also very glad that we've done this before, so we're feeling a little bit more relaxed. So the Koha US Education Committee consists of Lauren Denee and I, Sarah Cornell, who are the co-chairs. We also have Fred King, Jason Robb, Charlie Arthur, and David Nind, who formally serve on the committee. And lately we've had help from a few other folks, Chip Halvorsen, Kristen Ortelli, some other folks as well. And the reason that is because our meetings are open to all. So you are welcome to join us for any meeting. Informally, you can just listen in if you like. You might end up volunteering for something or being volunteered for something. That's the only danger of joining us. Um, our meetings are open all on the fourth Monday of each month at 1:30 Eastern Time. Check the Koha US website for the Zoom link. We have many, many projects in our queue, and that grows and shrinks as we work on them. There's plenty of work to go around, big and small projects, and we'd love to have your input. So we have a few housekeeping items today. We are scheduled for 90 minutes. I know the Zoom schedule, the Zoom meeting scheduled on the Koha US calendar said that it was 60 minutes. I think for a while, Jason might have changed that. So we totally understand if you have to leave a little early, do not worry about that. We understand it's how so many of these meetings go. The first hour or so will be a moderated discussion based on questions we drew from the Koha community as well as the committee. Approximately the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes to a half, or 20 minutes to 30 minutes, we'll transition to questions from the audience. We ask you to stay muted, um, participants to stay muted. If you have an immediate question related to the topic at hand at the moment, you can type it into the chat. During the audience question portion, you can also use the raise your hand function. It's under the React menu. And then in that case, wait to be called on before you unmute yourself. A few committee members are monitoring the chat. So if you have any question they can answer, they'll go ahead and help you out in the chat. Um, and as you think of questions for the panel today, keep in mind that today's discussion is really about the process of developments and working through bugs. We envisioned this event as a chance for users to get to know real developers and developers to get to know real librarians in a variety of roles. Um, so general questions are good. The moderator will steer us away from specific bugs and instructions on how to use Koha as it exists today. Instead, he'll keep us focused on the development process. I'm sure specific issues will come up as examples, and those are great, but we just appreciate your help in kind of keeping it focused on the big picture. As you can see in the title slide, we are most interested in making those connections and moving forward together. So I think at that point, oh yes, and so the program will be recorded. It will be available on the Koha US YouTube channel. We'll share a link to that in the same channels where you heard about the forum itself. And I hope a lot of you, it looks like a lot of you have gotten a chance to answer. Wow, 47 folks. Wow, this is a lovely crowd. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really happy we could do this for so many people. So take a second to answer the how do you use Koha? Like, what's your role in the Koha world? Um, and then I'm going to introduce our moderator, Bob Benhoff. Bob is the Aspen Cat Services Manager at CLIC, the Colorado Library Consortium, and is the past president of Koha US.
Thank,
And I'll hand it over to you to introduce the panelists as you
yeah,
see fit.
thanks, Sarah. We're gonna go through and we have a little bios of each panelist. that we'll kind of go through. Brendan could not be here today. He is experiencing some of the weather the Northeast is receiving and has no power, which would make it hard to participate in this. So no Brendan today. Uh, Ode, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Aude. I live in the north of England, so I'm saying hi from across the Atlantic. I'm French originally, you might have guessed it from the name, but I've been living in the UK for almost 20 years, and I used to work in a public library, which moved to Koha in 2018. And then in 2021, I started working with Open Fifth, where I help other libraries move to Koha. I do the training, I manage the project, and I'm involved with the Koha community, mainly with the documentation team.
Thank you. Alex also could not be here, but he is a developer from Catalyst, which is a company in New Zealand. I believe he was on the panel last year.
Mhm.
Christy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Bob. And thank you, everyone here. And thank you, koha-US Education Committee, for putting this together. I, like the slide says, I'm the ILS librarian at Cuyahoga County Public Library in Northeast Ohio. We're the county that includes the city of Cleveland, if you are curious where in the state of Ohio Cuyahoga County is. I'm also currently the vice president of koha-US, and that'll about do it, I think.
That means you're going to be the president someday. Philip, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Phillip Berg. I serve as the executive director at a local library cooperative in New Jersey called the Maine Library Alliance, which is kind of in like the northwestern quarter of the state. And our membership is composed of all public libraries, and some of them are small one building sites, others are multi-branch county library systems. So we're all kind of in one big version of Koha.
And Philip, I know you were involved with open source with Aspen Discovery for a while, but you've been more recent to Koha. How long have you been on?
Yeah, so we had previously been on Polaris Leap, and several years ago we shifted away from their version of the catalog to Aspen. So yeah, we've been on Aspen for probably like close to 5 years now, like maybe four. But Koha, we went live in March, and ever since then we've essentially been adding on new libraries that we've been merging together with. So we're not even on a year at this point.
Thanks. And then finally, Carol, can you
Hi,
introduce yourself?
yeah, my name is Caroline. I work for Inlibro, which is a support company based in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Um, like Odd, I'm responsible for data migration and training and support. So I accompany new libraries who are migrating into Koha as part of my job here. And for the community, I'm also on the documentation team, and I also do the French-Canadian translation of Koha.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're going to move to our questions. This is rapid fire, but do feel free to be expansive. We are in no hurry whatsoever. So the first question I have is where do you find if you're looking to customize Koha, make a change in the code, where do you go to look and find a developer to do that work? Or where does one look? And I'll throw that out to anybody to get started.
Sure, I'll break the ice. So our first step typically is opening a ticket with our provider, which is ByWater. And then from there, they kind of ask us questions as to what we're looking for, and maybe it already exists. We just don't know because we're quite young in Koha land. You don't know what you don't know. And then after that, they kind of just go through the process of building out a statement of work, and we just kind of go through them. We haven't gotten to the point yet where we've gone out to other or directly out to other developers. That could certainly change in the future, but for now, pretty much everything's flowing through ByWater.
I will add, it's the same process for us. We also have ByWater as our support vendor. But I do know that ByWater does contract with other developers. They've had OpenFifth do projects with us that, we initially went to ByWater and they referred us to OpenFifth for that. Or I think for like a smaller development when we went live, I think they went with a third party, like not support vendor, but another developer. So they're pretty knowledgeable about who can do the work.
So ByWater is the main developer in the US, but how does it look in other countries?
So for us in the UK, it would be a similar process to what Philip and Christy described. If a library is hosted and supported by us, we'll be their first port of call, and we do have some developers in-house. But if they want to look further, we are happy to provide them with information about finding about the wider Koha community and finding other developers there.
Yeah, and I think I don't know about the other vendors, but we tend to work geographically, I think, for most vendors. So ByWater is in the US, OpenFifth is in the UK, we're in Quebec and Canada and mostly French Canada, so everywhere in other provinces where they speak French is our main market. So when we receive sometimes people find our website and ask us if we could train them or something like that. And if they are in another geographical area, usually we'll refer them to whatever company is operating over there. So that's usually how it works for like new clients that are not supported or hosted by us.
Well, thank you. I want to follow up on something real quick because I think this is critical, and that is the barrier for entry that was described does not seem too bad. It doesn't seem like, when you think about like customizing code, that might be intimidating to some people. Can the panel address a little bit about how easy or difficult that might be to get this process rolling?
Well, I suppose it depends on whether or not you're doing the customization yourself. Like, if I had a coder here that was dedicated to doing developments, then I'm not sure what that process frankly would look like because I haven't really looked into it. But if you're going through one of the developers, I think they kind of take care of a lot of those sorts of things for you. At least that's my experience so far, which is very nice. But if we were in a situation where we did need to have a developer, my guess is we need to be very active in the community, building support in Bugzilla and that kind of thing.
And what I mean, Philip, is more because I don't think most people are going to hire a developer. You might. I could see you doing that, but I'm more thinking like, is this like a really labor-intensive, hard to understand process to connect with a developer and start to get to work?
I would say no. Though I will say if like us, you're coming at it from a proprietary perspective, like your previous ILSs were all proprietary. It does take a little while to wrap your head around the fact that it really isn't that big of a deal, depending on what company you had been coming from. Some of them are a little more open to getting feedback and getting things into the roadmap. Others are just closed off to it completely. So it's always an adventure. It's almost like you've come out of the cave and now the light is here, and you're like, oh wow, there's a lot of opportunities.
I think it also depends on what's the scale of the customization you're talking about and what we mean by development, because one of the big strengths of Koha is that as a system administrator, you can actually do a lot of customizations yourself, either the text in your notices or the look of the staff interface and the online catalog. So even with some really basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can actually do a lot of things yourself. And then the Koha community is there and happy to help. So I'm thinking on Mattermost, we see a lot more questions around helping with reports or helping with a bit of CSS. On the wiki, there are libraries where you have ready-made bits of code you can try. So it's really a question of scale. Sometimes you won't need a developer. If you're a tiny library, you can do some of those things yourself.
Great.
I-
Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's so much a barrier to entry, but a good thing before you start the process is to kind of have an idea of what your use case is. Like, why do you want this development and why do you need it for your customers? Just because it helps when you start talking to the developers, it helps them understand why you're asking for this and why you might want it a certain way. And then you guys both have that to refer to, and it helps inform the statement of work that gets made, because if you're both coming at it from different developers, sometimes think of things as just from the technical perspective. And it's like, well, why you could use this to do this already, and you're like, okay, but our users can't really do that, or our staff can't really do that. So having really thought out that story, that user story, before you start the development process, it's helpful.
I'm going to move to the next question, and that is, how do you get traction on a bug? Just to explain what a bug means in the Koha context, that could be something that's wrong with the code, not doing what it's supposed to be, or that can even be a new feature. But there are some links in here that suggest some options. But what are the panelists go to try to get a bug moving forward?
So I think for that, usually if you don't go through your vendor and you go directly on Bugzilla, the first thing is to open a bug report on Bugzilla. What I noticed is that some bugs get more traction than others. And the description and the title really help. Because there are thousands and thousands of open bugs on Bugzilla. And if it's just something like XYZ doesn't work, it's not it's not as easy to figure out as like this should do this, So in the title, really be descriptive of so that people can see at a glance what's wrong with the bug. And in the description, so if you really thought out your use case, like Christy said, just explain your use case really well and the steps to recreate the problem or the whatever you're trying to do in the description, so that it's easy to understand what you're trying to say.
Well, I think to Ode's point earlier, it also depends on how big or like what the scope is that we're talking about. If it's a huge project that, is going to cost $20,000-$30,000, then you're probably going to put it on crowdsourcing. I would say most libraries would do that, or reach out to people that you happen to know across the community. If it's something a little bit on the smaller side, but is really just something that you're going to care about, that maybe doesn't have may not have broad support across the board, you might need to reach out to individuals so that they comment on the Bugzilla page. We've had to do that on a couple things, just to better explain what's going on and why we're asking for what we're asking for.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up on what Philip just said. The type of bugs I get involved in, it's usually because someone pulled me into the bug, so I get copied into some bugs. I was like, oh, somebody copied me, and they must want me to have a look and say something. Or someone posts it on Mattermost again and say, oh, like, what do you think about that? And I'm happy to comment. And I also do that. So when someone tells me, oh, what do UK librarians think? How do they use this feature? I try to find people I know in the profession here and point them to the bug and say, oh, if you have time, can you go and have a look and comment? So it's that, yeah, not hesitating to ask other people also gets that bug particular visibility when it's a more discussion one.
Carolyn mentioned Bugzilla, and in addition to opening a bug, it helps to CC yourself on bugs, just because it it helps others know how many people are following this issue. A recent tool that that we have now in the community, thanks to Martin at Open Fifth and Jonathan Druart, is this dashboard that lists the top bugs by number of people CC'd on them. So that's another new tool that we have for trying to get traction and eyes on bugs, because a lot of people have said that when they sign into Bugzilla, it's just completely overwhelming. There's so many tickets in there, there's so many entries, there's so many comments, and they just don't know where to start. And this is a tool that kind of helps bring some of those top ones into focus. And I've been promoting this at Koha-US meetings, and so has Charlie Arthur. Thank you for doing that, Charlie. So if you weren't aware of this being out there, have a look. It's really interesting. And also CC yourself on bugs.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Christy. I was going to mention that myself, because even if you're not commenting or you already commented, that'll at least keep you aware of the progress of what's happening. Sometimes, depending on the complexity of the bug, you may get a ton of emails. You mentioned Martin, and he's working on something that I'm following. And I think I had 80 emails one morning when I woke up, because he just made one update, and it has so many attachments that every single one of them emails you. But most of the time, that's not the case. Philip, you were going to say something?
Yeah, something very similar. I was just going to recommend something that I decided this morning to put a filter on my inbox for those Bugzilla updates. I literally just got hit with 18 on something that just got signed off.
All right, let's move to another bug question. How do you confirm whether a bug or a development is already covered in ByWater solutions or Open Fifth videos or other, even Koha-US videos that may be out there? Is there a way that you recommend people look to see information that already exists before either filing a bug or commenting on it?
I don't know if I have a great answer for you, Bob, on that. I'm sorry. We're still very new. To be completely honest with you, we do rely a lot on ByWater for that. We're still trying to better understand that. If we were with Equinox, I'm sure it would be a similar situation there. But I'd probably just reach out to you, Bob, if I had any questions. Like, Bob, have you heard anything about this?
Well, sometimes the scary thing is our database that tracks that is just my brain, and I either remember I saw a video or I don't. So there's got to be a better system than that. Christy, what were you going to say?
I show up at Koha-US special interest groups or general meetings and ask, or I ask on Mattermost, is this something that exists or not? And usually people are more than happy to let you know.
I wasn't sure if the question was about finding resources on how to do something. So, if that is what the question is aiming at, I know both Caroline and I are really interesting to hear the answers for everyone because that really touches on Koha documentation and where do people go to find the information they need to use to best use Koha. There are so many resources out there and from so many different sources. So yes, I guess I'm not answering the question. I'm asking more. I'm saying I'm interested in the answers.
Yeah, I guess from a vendor perspective, it would be kind of like when somebody asks about something, what resources do you use to help answer that? I cut you off, Christy, sorry.
No need to apologize. I'm sure we're all going to be doing that to each other. So I don't know if anybody posted the ByWater's crowdsourcing page, but another resource I look at to see if something is already covered, at least like if somebody's financing it and work is underway, are the tiles on this board and whether or not it's in that funded or in progress category. That can give you some insight as well.
So yeah, from a vendor point of view, so if somebody asks me like, can I do this in Koha? My first point of call is likely to be the Koha manual, but maybe that's because I'm in the documentation team. I'm not sure. And then I will also look on Bugzilla because maybe I haven't used the right term in the Koha manual to find it. So I'll often have a look in there. But I will, in terms of how to, if a functionality does exist and how to use it, all my libraries are English speakers, so I will look for resources in English, which means it doesn't matter to me where that information is coming from. I'm just as happy to refer them to resources created by ByWater if I think actually there's more explanations there. So usually I ended up sending them several links and they can pick which one they want to use.
Yeah, so my process is pretty much the same. Manual first, and again, it's probably because I'm on the documentation team. I know it really well, so I know where to look for what I'm looking for. The difference for me is that all my clients are French speaking, so the videos are helpful to me, but not to them necessarily. So what we do is we usually we have our own knowledge base that we maintain in French. So if anybody, I mean, it's Google translatable. So if you need something, you can always go there and translate it. But yeah, and if really like a search in the manual doesn't return anything, a search in Bugzilla doesn't return anything, a search on Google doesn't return anything, I will usually turn to Mattermost and plug into the hive mind of the community and see if it rings a bell for anybody. And sometimes I don't get an answer, and sometimes somebody's like, "Oh yeah, that's bug 12345," and just like that. And so some people are really good at remembering these kind of details. So um, yeah, so if you've done your due diligence, ask on Mattermost. We're happy to help.
Yeah, that's a great pitch for that because those are where answers are or questions are asked and answers are given in real time. This next one, what's your process for submitting development requests? I think we kind of covered that a little bit with the first one, so please come up with completely new answers. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, I do have kind of a separate answer for you on that one, Bob, because we kind of have our own internal process that we need to go through first. We're not going to bother ByWater or the community or anybody else until we build consensus here internally, because again, lots of different libraries in the group, to ensure it actually does have an impact, even before we find out how much it would potentially cost. And we know we can't be submitting 20, 30 development requests for every release, so we kind of want to try to prioritize. what we're going after. So I would say for us, we have an ILS committee that's existed for a long time, and we have a new standard operating procedure in place for how a library could independently, but go through the committee without their approval to push forward on a development request, which means, surprise, surprise, they'd need to actually spend all of the money in order to do that. But if they want Maine as an entity to be pushing a development, then, we can't just have one or two libraries saying, yeah, this is great, and no one else wants it. So we kind of have that mini bureaucracy built in that we need to go through before we even open a ticket.
How does Cuyahoga work, Christy? Do you have something similar like that? Do you have
It's
like
very
a
similar.
committee?
Yeah, we are not a consortium, but we do have 27 branches. So within that, there's a Koha and Aspen management team at CCPL, and we review our backlog because we always have a running list of wouldn't it be great if to review, and we prioritize it, and we see where funds are available and how much time we think things are going to take to sort of hash out what we want to move forward with next.
So
Very
on the
similar
vet,
to CLS.
yeah, and we have a little bit of a less formal because we're a little less formal in my consortia. But on the vendor side, so what do you do when you get these requests? What are your steps?
For us, the first step will be to either check if it's already on Bugzilla, and if not, make sure to add it. So somebody thought it would be a good improvement for Koha, so we want everybody to know that somebody's already thought about it, and that's where the activity starts to gather. And then it's having a chat with the library of what's their priority for this, and do they actually have a budget they can commit. It's not common for libraries in the UK to have a development budget. So often the answer on that would be no. They can't actually commit this year or the next year, definitely not for that sort of development, but in the longer term, maybe they could. It's mostly going to be let's put it out there for now. Make sure, as both Christy and Caroline said, you explain really well why it's a good idea in the bug description, and then come back to it when you can commit to it.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same for us. We serve mostly smaller libraries because each city here, they're not in like groupings like counties or things like that, like in the US. So each city has its own library. So they're mostly small, either single or like couple of branches maximum. The main thing is to what we think about, other than putting it on Bugzilla, everything Odd said, is, does this apply to many libraries? If it's just like a quirk of one library, that's oh, we do this way here. We're not probably going to put in a lot of time on that. But if it's something that we can imagine a lot of libraries doing it this way, then yes, we're gonna push it forward a little bit more. And we're in the same situation as in the UK, where most libraries don't really have any budget. So we're putting it out there. We're gonna see if it gets traction. If it does, we'll work on it. If it's something, if it's really a bug that's preventing people from working, then we're just going to put in the time without necessarily asking one single library to pay for it. But yeah.
Do you ever run into an issue where somebody's like, yes, I realize this is just us that wants this, but we really want to make it happen?
Then we give them a price and they pay.
Yeah. It ultimately usually funnels towards that answer at some point. All right, we are to the questions for developers now. And I know we lost some development expertise on the panel, so this will probably be more geared to our vendors, but anybody can throw in some thoughts. But what is the best place for us, the user of Koha, to track the status and availability of new features as they're developed? I think we got some indication already, but I'll let you all confirm that.
Well, my main place is the dashboard, which Christy shared earlier, and there's a column for like new features, and I think they have a star next to them, or like a star with little extra scintillating things around it. Um, so for me visually it's easy to find. So I can see the new features, and I also have a Bugzilla search saved in my Bugzilla account, in which I search for a version released in, and then I put in my version number. So if you go in the like advanced search of Bugzilla, if people have ever gone in the depths of it, there is at the bottom completely, there is a place where you can select one of the like extra fields, and one of them is version released in, and you just put in like 2505 or something like that, and it's going to give you everything that's been put in that version.
As well as the dashboard, and like actually following or being CC'd into a bug on Bugzilla line when you get all the emails, as we discussed earlier. I think another way is just to try and keep an ear to the wider Koha community news, because developers will talk about what they're working on. Libraries funding developments will talk about what they're working on, and they'll often be looking for other opinions to make sure it works for the library that funded it originally, but it works for other people using Koha as well. So it can be on Mattermost again, it can be in specific working groups as well, where people will bring chats of what they're working on. I know Jason in the chat just put the roadmap, which is also another good document to look at.
Great, thank you. So we're talking about this next question deals with testing, because one of the things that I really am thankful for is when a developer writes code, it just doesn't immediately get released. There is a testing process to make sure, as well as possible, it doesn't break a bunch of other stuff. So what kind of feedback do you look for during that testing period as for developments that are being worked on, especially new feature? This question addresses new features, so it's not just fixing something which also gets tested, but something that's brand new and will change the way Koha works.
Well, I'm one thing that I think is useful when developing, and I'm not a developer, so it's just mostly what I hear in the office, is and it's important to comment if you've tested this and it will break your current workflow or something like that. So this is something that happens sometimes. Somebody thinks they have a great idea and they put it forth, and when you test, you're like, this is breaking something, or this is, even if it's not like a workflow that you, sorry, I'm trying to think in English at the same time, but So even if it's not a development you're looking forward to, testing it on a sandbox or whatever will still help. And you try to do your other things, thinking outside of the test plan that's written there, just to make sure that it doesn't break anything. Like if on your system you have this system preference that's enabled, and on the sandbox is not, it might, differ greatly from what the development is trying to do. I don't know if what I'm trying to say is clear, but sorry.
No, you're doing great. Ode, what does open fifth look for?
I agree with what Caroline said. Yes, I think it's one of the things I would add that's really helpful is when it didn't work, at which step did it not work? Where exactly is it? Because the developer isn't a librarian most of the time, even though there are people who are both. But often it's like in the testing plan, which step did it fail? Where does the developer need to go and look and fix the issue? And in the library's overall process, which bit can't they do? Because as Caroline said, sometimes it breaks their workflow. So it's those kind of things that the developer can't know because it's not in the library. They are not in the library themselves.
Yeah, and that's a critical point, I think, of why that feedback is huge, is also as someone who doesn't work in the library because I'm managing a consortia, actually getting that feedback from people using the software is critical. So I'm going to turn this to our librarian panelists and ask if you have any experience commenting on a bug during testing.
Yeah, I've signed off on a few bugs when I can get a sandbox up and spun up. I'm not I have never used KTD. That's a stretch goal someday for me. KTD is Koha Testing Docker, and it's like a command, as far as I know, it's a command line instance where you can work with that and do a little bit more involved testing. Sandbox is just like a spun up version of like a test instance of the generic Koha test instance that you'll see used to demo new features like in any support company's video. But oh no, my mind wandered and I got off topic. So what I have found when I've been reviewing things in sandboxes to sign off on things is I always like to attach a screenshot of when I say it didn't work or when I say it's doing this thing weird, this is what I mean. And I hope that those come through okay. With Bugzilla, you have to add it as an attachment and give it a file name. So I'm not always sure how prominently those look once I've posted them, but that's something that I rely on when I'm looking at things. I really love having a good test plan, because then I can just go back to like in point 5 is where I saw it's not doing what I expected it to do. And I think that helps keep communication very clear.
Yeah, I agree. Coming up with the test cases, or in the private sector, they would call it user acceptance testing, like UAT. We do that to a certain extent here, but I will say when it comes to sign off, we've had a lot of luck where the developer creates almost like a walkthrough video, like a screen capture showing what's going on. And then from there, we can say, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. And then we're comfortable hitting the sign off button for that. So thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, when there was a time where Andrew went back to a library and wasn't sending those videos because he wasn't employed at ByWater, and then I had to do way more work to sign off on stuff. So, Charlie mentioned that the baby devs special interest group for Koha US is a lot about Koha Test Docker. So if that's of interest in learning more, I recommend that meeting as well. That is a good place to get a little bit more hands-on with with the developers that are actively using it, and some other people that are aspiring developers, hence the baby devs. Next question is kind of a what is cooking in the kitchen right now question. Are there any things that that our vendor organizations are working on, and then even developments that you may be sponsoring on the librarian side that you're excited about coming to Koha in a release soon?
Well, that one I didn't prepare because it was questions for developers, and I felt I was it wasn't aimed at me, so I didn't prepare anything. But our main one right now is the switch. It's not very interesting for librarians, but it's the switch that Microsoft is doing, that they don't allow basic authentication for SMTP servers anymore, starting in April, I think. So we're trying to get their whatever authentication in Koha Core to make sure all our clients that are using Microsoft SMTP servers are not suddenly left in the cold come April.
Yeah, that is a good plumbing, not glorious, but really important.
I think the glorious things about those kinds of developments is that you don't notice they happen because nothing broke, and that in itself is amazing.
Yes, I also did a bit like Caroline, and at first I skipped past typing it for developers. So I'm frantically looking at what my colleagues are developing right now. So everyone I did could have said out of the top of my head is my colleague Matt is working on the new acquisitions module. So he's been working with a special interest group and other interested parties across the world to bring the acquisitions module into the modern times and add a lot of requirements that are currently missing from that acquisitions module. So it's a long it's a long piece of work. I think I feel like it started ages ago, at least a year. We've been maybe more. We've been talking about this. So there's little bits coming in with every release. That's coming through slowly but surely. Some of those of my colleagues have been working on developments funded by libraries either in the UK or the US. So things like patrons self-renewals, I believe, have helped with. In the UK, we've got libraries that asked for customizations for their interlibrary loan process. So we've built plugins for them for that. And we have libraries that heavily use EDI ordering. So we've been adding, I want to say bits and pieces, but I'm sure Martin would phrase it very differently because he's done the bulk of it. But there are things like logging, so it's a lot easier to see when things go wrong with EDFACT messages in the acquisitions module. There's a lot more we can see and do for that. And if I was going to pick one new development that wasn't developed by us, but is probably my favorite in 2511 or 2505, it's actually this one. I'm going to post it in the chat, and every system librarian will understand why it's my favorite. It's just making your life a lot easier when you're having to edit your circulation rules. So thank you to the people who did this one.
Yeah, circulation rules are an absolute beast. Philip, Christie, do you want to talk about some of the work that's going on to enhance some speed, things like that? Because I feel that's important to the three of us. I know that much.
Yeah, Philip, feel free to jump in as well. We can tag team. So there were ByWater put 3 developments on the crowdfunding board to address performance issues. One had to do with optimizing holds, how when you, especially with big systems where you've got titles that get over 300 holds, loading that page can start to slow down. So optimizing that is one. Optimizing how the catalog search functions is another, and then using Vue.js to update the circulation module as well. These are 3 big sort of plumbing, as Bob mentioned, developments that really we're really hoping improve performance speed and in Koha. And Phillip has been gathering some libraries, larger libraries to discuss, and 5 libraries have come together to fund those 3 developments. I believe it's Clams, Maine, Ocean State, CLIC, which is Bob's library, Colorado Library Consortium, and Cuyahoga County Public Library. Phillip, what did I forget?
No, I think you hit all the points. It affects pretty much everybody, I would say. Certainly, to Christy's point, it affects systems that are operating with multiple branches or many branches. It's kind of been an issue for us since we've gone soon after we went live, and we tried obviously lots of different things, but frankly, kind of redesigning how some of this works on the back end is really the only way forward, and it's really kind of going to help, I think, entice other larger systems to consider Koha, knowing that this is in place. So I don't know if we have an exact timeline. My guess is late this year, this calendar year would probably be the soonest we see any of these come to fruition. But I know that there's a lot of people pushing this and trying to get it done as soon as possible.
All right, let's move on to our last round of questions that's focused on librarians and users of Koha, but obviously Carolyn and Ode can jump in on these as they interact with those people on a daily basis. If you could choose one thing for Koha to improve next, what would it be? I think we've targeted the thing that Christy and Phillip were talking about is that thing, but after that is done, what's the next thing?
I could tell you what I think, Bob. Uh, I would love for us to not have to worry about like performance issues and certain features, that maybe we were accustomed to having in previous ILSs. I'm highly intrigued, and if anybody else is, feel free to reach out. Afterwards we can always chat about getting a little more aggressive with plugins to essentially replace things that many libraries are paying for annually. So I'm thinking about things like, like library of things circulation. And I know there's ways you can do it in Koha now, but like museum passes, summer reading modules, there's all these different like little things that we're paying for. And yeah, often it isn't a ton of money, but if we could build something ourselves that works really well and is highly customizable, to me, I know that there would be a bit of a barrier in terms of initial investment, but then we don't have to pay that annual toll every single year and hope that they don't go out of business or get bought out by some other company.
So just to clarify, you're using some third-party vendor stuff, but you want to bring it in under Koha so you have access to it and you're not paying a vendor
Yes.
money.
Yeah, like I don't want to say any individual vendors out loud, and potentially make them bigger, but it's just our budgets are not getting any bigger. They're generally stagnant, and the cost of healthcare alone is killing libraries. So if there's a longer term way to maybe pay a little bit or get grant money to, put through that kind of a thing, and then anytime we want to change it, we can just change it ourselves.
I have an example of development that Cuyahoga County Public Library is working on, is going to be funding, and that has to do, Carolyn already mentioned patron renewal. And what we're hoping to do is have Koha talk to a discovery layer about patron renewal, not just the OPAC, so that patrons can go in and update their information and confirm that everything looks good and renew their patron account through that means. That's something we're really excited about. Also, we've been doing a lot of, we're really grateful for work that Lizette and Tomas have been doing on getting us connected to a new ILL platform. And so I'm just also really interested to see where development in how plugins and anything to do with ILL. There's a lot going on there, so I'm sure that'll be something to keep looking at. I feel like I'm not being very coherent, but basically patron renewal and ILL requests are two development topics I'm following. Oh, and Andrew says there's some good news about patron renewal, so more to come on that.
This is where you have to go to the next koha-US thing. It's a cliffhanger.
I know. Yeah. Find out what happens next time.
Carolyn or Ode, anything you
Yeah,
want to
so-
completely overhaul?
Yeah, the one I identified was there are some tools that we use as vendors that are command line, and I think some of them would be really cool to be included in the staff interface of Koha. So one I use all the time to diagnose problems is search for data inconsistencies. So it's a command line that you run on the server, and it returns all sorts of errors that are happening in Koha that are caused by cataloging or, data entry or whatever, and or, after upgrades, something wasn't done quite right or something like that. So that one is really interesting, and I think it'd be really interesting if it could be included in Koha. I think we're working on a plugin for it. I'd have to check. I think that one is the one we're working on. The other one I use a lot is compare ES to DB, which compares your records in your database versus what is indexed in Elasticsearch. And sometimes there are little discrepancies, which means that you can't find something, or you find something that's not there or something like that. So yeah, so those are two tools that I use a lot when I do support, and maybe librarians could use them if they were in the staff interface, and it would be able to solve their own problems. Not that I don't want to help them solve their problems, but it's sometimes if you have the tools, you can be more independent. That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, totally. I always like to have options that I can do something so I don't have to wait on somebody else. So that totally makes sense.
And for me, you probably saw where my interest was when I posted my favorite book. So I think there's still more we can do to improve circulation rules. I know for most people, once they are set, you don't need to look back to them, but actually setting them up is often a bit of a pain, and maintaining them can be as well. So I would want to see things like that would allow me to easily follow lines through the table. So now we can highlight, but I know it's been suggested because there are bugs for it about freezing columns and rows. Doing that sort of thing, I would want an easy way to update more than one row at a time. Those sort of things. We've had questions about actually exporting them so you can modify them offline, because it sounds like it would be easier, because right now updating more than one line is really time consuming, and then importing them back in. So whatever the solution is, I think those are the sort of things that will help a lot of librarians.
So we are at the top of the hour. We got I know we've got a number of questions that came in that are collected. I think what we will do is just do some one-word answers for the next couple ones on the screen. So you get to pick one of which system preference do you wish you knew more about?
Notice CSS was me.
Okay. So making notices look pretty
Yeah.
is what I'm translating that into. Philip, any system preference?
I mean, I guess all of them because we're so new, but one of the one that's probably just keeps coming back and is constantly a thorn in our side is holds, and like fulfillment and that kind of thing, and we've had to do some developments on that side. I would say a tie between holds and also like which preferences can be done at the system, like library, entity, and branch level. There's so many things that are inconsistent there as to what you can do in one place but not in another. And again, those are other developments we've had to go through to get done. But you know, those are consortial problems rather than like a single library.
I'm gonna skip our vendors on preferences because you probably swim in those and you know all the preferences. But let's just each do a what data do you wish Koha could track but doesn't, and just do a nice simple answer for each panelist.
Yeah, mine is OPAC searches. So if we could get just whatever people type in the search bar would be interesting.
So I'm not sure what I put down for this was marking something missing or withdrawn. And I feel like when I look at the modification log for something, I can see that a change was made, but I'm not really clear on whether the change was made. And I think like I'll see that the status is still the status that it was before the change was made, like the not for loan status stayed 0, but I know it's not 0 because it has a status of 1 now. So I think better visibility on that would be the data I would want to track more
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm gonna concur with making the modification change logs actually legible to the human eye.
Yeah, Bob, I just asked our sysadmin, and it's basically what he said. Last modified date, last activity date, checkout date, year to date, circ, lifetime. But first available date is probably his number one.
Yeah, so yeah, there are improvements coming to the action logs where you'll be able to see the diff in the next, I think it's 2511. For me, it would be something similar to that is a record of when an item was checked in and by whom, because some of the tables will give you that information, but it depends on what that item was doing before it was checked in, which table it will actually be recorded in, and how clearly it will be recorded in. And when you're trying to find out what happened, why it didn't come up to fulfill a reservation, it's really hard to understand what really happened.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely run into that. Okay, so Charlie's been collecting some of the questions that have been happening, so I'm just going to throw them at you. Anybody jumped in. If you don't have an answer, don't feel compelled to answer every one of these. But Christopher asked, has the growth in the use of discovery systems like Aspen Discovery hindered or helped the improvement of the OPAC portion of Koha? From a user perspective, having a discovery layer seems to have complicated the process of adding a new feature, since the feature first has to be developed in Koha and then has to be supported in the discovery layer. So for Philip and Christy, you've never used the OPAC, so you might not have answers to that.
I'll defer.
Yeah, I guess my answer is just use Aspen, and you don't have to worry about it.
I agree that it has made it more difficult because it is duplicating work if like some features are developed for Koha and all the libraries that don't use the Koha OPAC but use a discovery layer like Aspen, then want that feature in Aspen or expect that feature in Aspen. So it's twice the amount of work for vendors that like us that support both for just the one feature. And yes, and at the same time, we have developers who say, oh, but if Aspen can do it, then surely the Koha OPAC should be able to do it. And we should put more effort into also developing the Koha OPAC.
Carolyn, do you have libraries that are using a
No,
discovery system? Okay.
no.
So have you noticed any changes to the OPAC in the last few years?
Well, the developments are still being done on the OPAC, which I think is good, because it keeps it up for those smaller libraries that can't really afford another software on top of the software they already have. I think it's important that we continue to support the Koha OPAC. What we do with the Koha OPAC is mostly customize it to make it look like the library's main website. But other than that, I think people are liking it.
Great. Another question from Christopher that Carolyn answered a bit in chat, but we had a little bit more comment on that we could explore. Should you fail a sign-off when you find something that doesn't look right or work that was just not outlined in the test plan? And then Carolyn, you mentioned yes, unless you find that it's not blocking, and then somebody followed up, what is considered blocking? So do you want to get back into that question and address that?
I'm just reading Emily's answer, which looks very complete. So she said, a good rule of thumb is, does it cause a problem or break something? Then in which case it's blocking. Is it mostly aesthetic, like a typo? That's not blocking. Is it somewhat a matter of opinion, like whether the workflow is intuitive? Probably not blocking unless you feel like it's sorry, I can't pronounce that word today, prohibitively unintuitive, but you can also mark it as failed and ask for feedback if you're not sure. So I think comments on Bugzilla are a discussion and all opinions are welcome, especially from librarians and end users. Because like Odd said, a developer doesn't necessarily, some of them do, but they don't really know what your workflow is. And so I think it's important to bring attention to things that will break your workflow, or if you look at the test plan and you're like, what the heck is that? So that in that case you should fail it. If it's well, in my library we do this way, so maybe we should add an option or have it as optional or something like that, because sometimes they introduce new features without a switch, and it happened on our latest upgrades where some features were on by default and you couldn't switch them off, and it doesn't make sense for your library to have this. So it's important to know in advance and not after it's been pushed to main.
No, and one thing I would add, when you mark something as failed, it's not like dynamite goes off and all the work is gone away. It's very easy if you make a mistake on that and to put that back into a not failed status. So I think probably developers would want more commentary and more of that than less. Is that, I'm saying nod, so that's probably, I wouldn't want people to be intimidated because it's, they're worried about making a mistake because anything would be easily put back the way it was. Okay. Next question. Why does the circulation rules table have to just be one table? We do have kind of some things that are split out, but
Or so big.
yeah, of course, well,
There is a proposal. I know my colleague Martin proposed to split it into several tables. I can't remember which bug that proposal is on, but that's one of the options being suggested.
Yeah, there is a bug that's called something like circulation rules rework or something like that. I feel like I've gone on it so many times before.
It's not even one table, it's one table per library, and then there's more tables underneath, and
and I think this is a result of you got general circles that started, and then people want to take stuff out of the global settings, and instead of making it a system preference, make it adjustable by branch, which we like, but then the accordion expands and it becomes more unwieldy to deal with for sure.
And I like new columns in the circle tables. I would just like to say this because it does give you more options, more granularity to making things more specific per library, per item type, per patron category. But it's more about how do we make that still usable.
I did want to share that in the chat. Barbara's posted a link to the circulation rules table bug. So if you guys would like to review the bug, it's in the chat. Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, that's a great example of a bug that lots of comments on is good because everybody is going to use those a little bit differently. Another question from Teddy. If something is developed professionally by ByWater or OpenFIF, is there a process and timeline that the finished product is shared with the community, not with that company or in another country? So I think what that's getting at is maybe how some of the signing off works. Yeah, when something is done, that's what I'm interpreting it as. Because somebody want to explain how signing off and passing QA works. Because nothing gets into the code without being shared with the community.
I know that it needs a sign off. So the Bugzilla, once the patches are ready from the developers, they'll mark it ready for sign off. Then somebody in the community, it could be a librarian, it could be someone from another, well, really anyone out in the community can review and mark the bug signed off. Then it needs to go through QA. I think there's some automated QA steps that happen if you're ever following up in the corner of the bug. I learned this recently. If you take a look at oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Never mind on that. But I do believe there's some like automated stuff. And then there are also the release manager needs to do the final sign off on the QA. I did see Lucas put something in the chat, so I know he's on this call. So he could, there we go. Lucas posted a link to understanding the development workflow. But I think my understanding is mostly correct. Everybody else correct me, please, though.
That all makes sense to me. Obviously OpenFIF was mentioned, so I feel like I have to say something. I think the important thing to remember is there's always a bug, so it's always public. So anyone, even if you're not involved at the very start, can actually see and comment at any point. Often the first sign-off will be from, if it's a work that's being commissioned by a library, often that library will be the first sign-off. And it's because they were the ones to explain, first of all, what they thought the feature should be. And they're the ones who are like poised to test. But afterwards, there are definitely other people who are not from either that library or that company, as Christy explained, through the development process, that will review that bug and make other comments of, oh, this needs to be improved so that it can be used more widely. I would also say there definitely has been conversations on how, as a community, we can do better at making sure what each part of the world does is taken into account when we make major changes in the system. So again, thinking about acquisitions, we know acquisitions is used very differently in different countries, and we need to make sure we accommodate for all of that. But are there other areas where we need to be a bit more careful? Even something that looks minor may actually affect people who have a different workflow in another part of the world. So I don't have the answer for that, but I do think it's worth us as a community discussing it and see how we can improve that.
And I think to answer the question they were asking about a timeline, there is not really any timeline unless the company, I think, really invests time in it, like the roadmap stuff, or like the SMTP stuff that I was talking about earlier, that where Microsoft is going to cut off everybody in April. Since there are so many steps in the development process, there's the sign off, there's the QA, and then it goes back and forth between the two, sometimes a couple of times. There's not really any way, well, I don't think, that we can, as a community, as an open source community where everybody works on their own things, that we can commit to a timeline.
Yeah, I'll hop in. I have to correct myself. I was conflating when I was rambling about automated QA. I was thinking more of like the version audit. If you look at the Koha dashboard, in the top right-hand corner, I posted a screenshot of it. There's like some tools, I think, that do that on like the Koha versions. But I also did want to just jump into, if I didn't post the link, if you look at the Koha roadmap, sometimes you can take a look at the upcoming version, like 2511 or 2605. I think they might already be doing the roadmap for, and you'll see like what people, oh, thanks, David. This is coming from the automated tests. Yes. So like if you are trying to sort of figure out whether a development is scheduled for that upcoming, or whether it's aspirational that it's going to be in that release, checking the Koha development roadmap is good resource.
And I think aspirational is always the key word with any timelines. That's why if you're like, when do I get this? Your vendors are gonna start to get a little cagey, because I think they know they cannot just promise that things just sail through the community process, or there isn't some other critical thing that pops up that developers then have to go work on, because a lot of libraries aren't functional because of something that came through. So those timelines are always on the move, I would say. I'm seeing a new question come in. Christopher, do we need to identify professional developers as certified Koha community developers so libraries or organizations are not wasting their time with a developer that says they know what they are doing, but really need to be educated along the way? There are a lot of things that are unique to how Koha works, that even if you could write code, maybe you don't understand how that code works in Koha. So what does the panel think about the useful of some sort of certification process?
Yeah, I don't know who would do it, but That sounds great. I mean, having like a Koha boot camp for sysadmin coming, off the street and never used it before would be something along those lines. That would also be great.
I think as a community, we pride ourselves on being open to everyone, and all skills sets are welcome. So, and I don't know, I've always felt like the community was really helpful when you're starting out. Everyone is telling you where to look and what to do. So, and I think as we mature in the community, we help bring in new people also. So to to make them in our own way, in the Koha way. So I think it's it's important to welcome everyone, and all help is welcome to me anyway.
Yeah, and as Christopher points out, he's referencing a time where koha-US, that sponsors development, went with not an experienced community developer. And technically what they wrote did what was asked, but it was not going to ever get through the QA process because it didn't meet Koha standards. So there was some time and money wasted on that, and then we had to go to an actual Koha vendor to do a little work to clean it up to eventually get it in, which we did. So that, I think that's a little bit of the backstory on that one. But I see what your point, Carolyn, of also you don't want to restrict people from coming in and contributing to the community, because how many developers are there in that are submitting in each release? It's not like a massive amount of people writing code, right? It's smaller than I think we would all like, as we want to see all those new things come in. So there's a balance there for sure. Well, we have about 6-7 minutes left. Does anybody else have any other questions they want the panel to answer? You can even unmute at this point. We're getting loose. We're at the end.
While you all are thinking of your questions that you want to squeeze in at the end, um, let us know also in the chat if you'd like to, what you might have thought about this event, if you'd like to attend this sort of event. Again, we also, thank you for changing this slide. You can also, wait, is it on this slide? There will also be a post-event survey. Yes, there you go. To let us know how we might do next year's, what we might tweak, what we might address specifically, that kind of thing. That's your chance to do that. And there will, like I said earlier, be a recording. I don't think that the chat gets saved in the YouTube recording. So now is your chance to remember how to save a chat and then save the chat. So I'm pretty sure that you go to the three dots in the top of the chat window, and then it will save it to somewhere random on your desktop that you have to then remember how to do. I'm trying to be really honest about this because it always takes me 5 minutes to find the chat that I saved. And let's see, so the recording will be, not sure what the timeline is on the recording. I have a feeling Christopher will let us know what his timeline is on getting the video up on YouTube, so bear with us on that one. And I think I got everything. So are there any last minute questions?
Just point out George, who knows all too well when you suggest something, wants to do more of these even daily, which means when you suggest something in the koha-US community, it means you might be the one doing it. So
yes. Actually, that is a really good point. So this has been a really wonderful conversation. I'm taking notes for myself. I'm like, making bookmarks in my own, my own little Koha browser folder saying like, okay, I'm gonna have that handy next time I wonder where that is. Um, I I'm just, unless somebody else have any other questions. Okay, now you're just cracking jokes in the, in the chat. Okay. Um, I appreciate this community so much. It has been a lifesaver for the 8+ years that we've been on Koha in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I don't even think I said where I was from. Um, so, so this week, what's going on? There is a bug squashing event going on this whole week. Not sure exactly how that works because I was working on this forum. Um, so there is a bug squashing event. Um, uh, ByWater Solutions also has been doing an Ask a Dev monthly drop-in. And that's been informal enough where I'm actually glad to see our colleagues at ByWater who are just saying, whoops, nope, can't do it this month. So please do keep an eye out for that. I think one of the really great things about this community is the fact that there's so much cross-pollination between librarians and vendors and developers, and we didn't have specific developers whose whole job title is developers, but listen to how well everybody answered developer questions and user questions and support questions. So I think that's something that we should all, take a second to be pretty grateful for, that this community is so functional because we have often had multiple hats. Multiple people have held different roles, and they keep using all those skills. So, unless anybody else has anything to add, just one last thank you all, and enjoy your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, panelists.